when you look at the statistics, they're scary and they're crazy in terms of our health. Like 50% of kids have a chronic disease at this point. More than that as an adult. Most adults are taking medications.
It's shocking.
Like, it should not be that way, and it's going in the wrong direction on, every single number and statistic. You look at autism rates, it was like 1 in 25,000, then 1 in 1,000, then 1 in 350, then it's like 1 in 36, 1 in 22 in California now.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah. I think screens have become like the boogeyman of, we should never have our kids on screens, but they're not going anywhere.
Right.
So I think it just has to be curated screen time and reasonable screen time, because teens are on screen 7 to 9 hours a day on average, which is insane. That's insane too.
7 to 10 hours.
The mental health crisis is worse than ever. If you look at the stats, 50% of teens by the age of 18 have a mental health diagnosis.
Was the vaccine question this big, this taboo before COVID?
That, to me, as a pediatrician, is there's a lot of questions. I think parents have a lot of questions these days, and the biggest frustration to me around vaccines is
for those parents that are skeptical and in a place of distrust, but they don't have a Joel Gator to go to. How can they make great decisions for their kids and find information?
Oldish, the show where age-old questions meet new age answers. With your hosts, Randy Spelling, Brian Austin Green, and Sharna Burgess.
Dr. Joel Gator, welcome to Oldish.
Thanks for having me here.
I'm so excited to have you here because, well, first of all, you specialize in pediatrician medicine. Do I say that correctly?
Pediatric
medicine. I say these things wrong. I panic when I'm the one that has to introduce
right.
them.
Totally.
I'm going to
You're
say
like,
the
oh
words
no,
wrong.
I'm
Let
on
me
the
try
spot
this,
now.
Sharna. You are a board-certified pediatrician.
There we
Why,
go.
thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And you moved into integrative medicine, parenting, well-being for children.
Correct.
Yes.
And what I love about this is, Joel, you are actually our pediatrician for our kids. So I really should have been better at the intro.
Do you know,
really
I
should.
asked him before you got here, I said, I think they're patients of yours. And he said, well, they can tell you that if they are, but I can't say. And I was like, good job, Doc.
Good job, Doc.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to chat with you. I follow you on Instagram. I'm on your email list for your masterclasses. And what I love so much about you is you honor both Eastern and Western, traditional or conventional medicine, and the more newer homeopathic, the integrative side that you talk about. But for those people that don't really understand the difference, can we just start there? Like, what are these two different sides of medicine? And people battle it out all the time over what's better and what's not. But I love that you have a view of both. So if you could give us a quick download on what those two are.
So for me, I did all the regular training in Western medicine. I went to a great program, but I got frustrated with the regular system. And so that's when I started learning about integrative medicine and natural medicine. I'm not against Western medicine at all. I just think that there's a time and a place, and I think that we should be integrating all of the other practices that are out there.
Why did you get frustrated with Western?
I got frustrated because it was like we were giving medications like they were candy. That was the only option that we had. We didn't learn about anything else. And also, I saw patients, family members, friends going to other practitioners and getting better after they had diagnoses where they were told that it would be for life, or here's your medication that you should take for life, and they would go somewhere else.
Or no diagnosis too is what I dealt with.
Unknown.
There were a lot of people that were like, in Western, it was like, we don't know, good luck. And
Here's
it was
your
like,
steroid.
Good luck.
Good luck to you.
Yeah,
and,
here's your steroid, exactly.
And then they would go somewhere else, and then they would, run all these woo-woo tests, but we would be thinking about it, and they'd bring it back to you, but they'd get better. And so that led me to start thinking, okay, there must be something more to this. And so I started learning about it. Also, around that time, I met my now wife, who was also very holistic-minded, and changed up my diet and started learning a little bit more about that. And so I think those things together really led me to learn about integrative medicine. Also, I'm pretty open-minded, and I feel like as a pediatrician and as a parent, we want to do what's best for our kids. And when you look at the statistics, they're scary and they're crazy in terms of our health. Like 50% of kids have a chronic disease at this point. More than that as an adult. Most adults are taking medications.
It's shocking.
Like it should not be that way, and it's going in the wrong direction on, every single number and statistic. You look at autism rates, it was like 1 in 25,000, then 1 in 1,000, then 1 in 350, then it's like 1 in 36, 1 in 22 in California now.
That's
1 in 22.
1 in 22 kids.
So why do you think that is?
Yeah.
Well, I think the bigger question is why don't we know, right? Why don't we know? Why are we not looking into it?
Right.
We really don't know the answer. I think there's a lot of theories, but we don't know. To me, the biggest two things are our food. So our food is really crappy, and we're not getting the nutrients that we need for our bodies to grow and survive, and there are too many toxins. So we're being exposed to too many toxins that our body can't handle, and we're also not getting the nutrients that we need to grow and for our immune system to function appropriately. And at some point, every child or adult gets to this point where their body just can't handle it anymore, and it expresses itself in different ways, whether that's autism or an autoimmune condition or something. I think that's what we're seeing, but we still don't really know. It's just like, maybe it's genetics, maybe we're just catching it more. And we are, right? We're better at diagnosing things. That's certainly part of why we're seeing it more, but that doesn't explain it even close. I don't think.
There was, and this is going to, I want to actually get back to the nutrition conversation, but we talk about the rise in these diseases and or things like autism. Australia, I want to say it was the 90s. We were starting to combine vaccines. And they saw a rise in, I want to say it was autism. I could have my facts wrong, but there was a definite rise. And so they separated them and they put it down to, again, this is like third-hand information stuff I'm reading. You'll know it better than me. Possibly the mercury or whatever they were used to bond these vaccines together. Do you think the massive amounts of vaccines that kids have to have today to go to a public school? Like, it's wild. The schedule of vaccines, I show my Australian friends and their jaw is on the floor.
What is the schedule right now?
Do you want me to go through like the CDC schedule or?
What is the typical schedule here
Yeah.
It's like
in America?
28 different vaccines that you have to have before you go to school.
So you can get a hepatitis B at birth. Or you can do it later, and then there's usually vaccines at 2 months, 4 months, and 6 months. So you might do a combo shot, but it would be a whooping cough shot, which is the DTaP shot, so diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, hepatitis B, Haemophilus influenza, pneumococcus, and polio. So that would be like the ones you'd be getting at 2, 4, and 6, and then after 1, you'd be doing measles and chickenpox, and there's boosters of each one. So
Now,
you'd be doing a couple rounds.
why is the schedule? Because I remember when I was a kid, I got, I think, 6 vaccinations.
Same.
And it was
Right.
like, okay, you're good for life. Like there was, and now, by the time a baby is 6 months old, it's already supposedly been scheduled at 7 vaccines at that point?
Something like that. I mean, depends how many you're doing and how many combo shots, but yes, something like that.
It seems like the rate of those diseases spreading would have been much worse when I was a kid than they are now, because there's so much, the monitoring of everything is so different. How is it? It seems like it's backwards. Like we're vaccinating people for everything now, but it's like it doesn't seem like there would be. It seems like if there was anything to vaccinate against, it would have been back during the time in the 70s when I was a kid.
And most of these things are still around, though. Most of them are not common, right? They're not common, and proponents of vaccines would argue that's because of the vaccines. You have herd immunity, and it's decreased the risk for kids over time. Other people argue that that's not true, and that the rates went down a long time ago. But either way, I mean, the schedule is what the schedule is, and it's hard to, from sitting here, there are smarter people than us at the CDC or wherever that are making these schedules and figuring it out. And I don't know exactly how they came to each decision that they did, but that's the schedule that they recommend. That's the schedule the American Academy recommends, and that's what doctors recommend. I mean, there's a lot of questions, and I think that to me as a pediatrician is there's a lot of questions. I think parents have a lot of questions these days, and the biggest frustration to me around vaccines is that we can't talk about it. Right, I think that's the big issue. Is the second
even now, I feel like we're towing a line. Just
there's
talking
tense.
about
I can feel it in my
vaccines.
body, because there is this tensity of what can we say, what can't we say, and I think just like politics and everything else that's polarized, why can't we talk about something that we are electing to put into our bodies?
Right? Why do we not get a say?
Yeah.
Like even Tylenol and Advil. I looked into these things that are just over the counter. There are side effects from those drugs that are standard over the counter. Why is it unfathomable to talk about side effects, or at least to look at the potential risk of it? Because every drug commercial that I see, at the end, they always have the side effects, and it's the long
they
list.
speak really
It's
fast
like
because they have
blurred
to fit
vision,
into
death,
Diarrhea,
totally.
constipation,
Yeah, right.
death.
Or sudden death. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right, they always end it with death, and then like a nice theme song at the end, and everybody
Right.
skipping, flying a kite. you
Right,
know?
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
But for these things, it's like we can't talk about that because that's sort of taboo. Or one of the craziest things to me, I was just having this conversation. I was always known as more alternative. Now, though, because of what happened through COVID, it was like, if you even have questions about a vaccine, you're far right or you're extremist. And I was like,
Right,
what?
right.
I was
Why are
known
you
as like
always-
a hippie.
I've always been this way. Nothing is Nothing
Yeah.
changed except
So why?
now I'm forced into things.
Well, I was going to say, and I'm not anti-vaccine at all. I think that's what you get labeled right away if you just talk about it.
Sure.
Which again,
Right.
it's insane
Yeah,
to me that
they
you
put
say
you
the
in a
word,
box, you're either
you
one
would-
or the
and-
other.
And there shouldn't be any such thing. I think we should be pro-health, pro-children, pro-figuring out what the best thing to do. And pediatricians are not bad people, right? These are people that go into medicine to help kids. And I think everybody has maybe a different opinion on how we get to a place of health, but most people are coming to the question from the same issue. It's just they don't agree necessarily on how to get there. We all want kids to be healthy. And so not being able to have conversations, to me, is ridiculous, and I can't make recommendations about vaccines for anyone who's not a patient. I mean, the recommendations are what they are.
Yeah.
But that we can't have a conversation to talk about, could there be things that we could do different? Could there be ingredients in there that might have side effects? Should we have other groups that are studying these things beside the company, who obviously has an incentive to, promote their product and minimize the risk? I mean, that's obvious. That's true of every company for everything they've ever made.
Of course.
Right.
So the fact that you can't talk about it just lets them have carte blanche to do whatever they do, and that's not the right thing for health. We need to step back and say, okay, well, what is the best for our kids? Can we continue to look at this? Maybe the answer is what we have is the best, and then we continue to talk about that. We talk about why, but when you shut down the conversation, then
No, you
creates
get no
distrust.
answers.
it creates a lot of
Yeah.
distrust, and I think the families that I see at the office are very similar to a lot of families around the country, where they, parents want to be educated on this. They want to do what's best for their kid. They don't want to do anything that's going to harm their kid, but they also don't want to not do something like get a shot if it's going to protect them from a disease that's going to kill them.
Right.
So they want the
Exactly.
information.
They want the information. If the
Right.
if everybody's afraid to talk about it, then
Then it doesn't help anybody.
information, yeah,
that
is
is
not available.
informed consent.
Right.
Right.
That is literally what informed.
Right.
It's not me telling you what to do, and that's where when I talk about my stance, I believe in informed consent. I believe in informing people of the best information that I have and then letting them make a choice. And that is controversial sometimes, just to not say, oh yeah, everybody should get it always or whatever. And that's not true of anything in medicine ever. There's some people that have allergies. There's some people that have side effects. There's some people that have conditions. So it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't, not just vaccines, but medications, whatever. There's nothing that is for everybody.
Right.
And so we have to be able to talk about what is the best for your child on that day. And the
There
only way
just
we can do
seems to
that.
be so
Yeah.
much vitriol in the conversation
Yeah.
because it is kids, and everyone's like, "Oh, my kids and going to school, and I don't want them being around kids that aren't vaccinated or aren't,
But
I don't want those
well, all right,
risks."
question. Was the vaccine question this big,
hot?
this taboo before COVID?
Not in the public.
Not in the
in
public.
medicine, yes.
No,
Got you.
yeah.
In medicine, yes.
Yeah.
What does that
Interesting.
mean in medicine?
I think in terms of if anybody was speaking out or discussing vaccines in general or stating something alternative to the regular schedule, then that would be something that would be not looked upon too fondly.
Right.
I think the conversation has become a lot more broad and generalized through COVID because of obviously everything that happened during COVID and all the discussion around vaccines and medications and everything like that. So I think it got more in the open, and I also think a lot of people saw what happened during COVID and then gained a major distrust for medicine, and so then went back and are questioning every other thing. And that's not my opinion. That the research shows that there's a higher hesitancy in medicine than ever before. A lot of people are not going to doctors anymore. A lot of people didn't get their shots, and so the reality is that not having conversations has led to more distrust, and telling people what to do instead of discussing things has led to
Can
more
I just
distrust.
say, from my experience, that I don't think that the medical community necessarily has handled it in a very good way either. I know when Sharna was pregnant and we were looking for a pediatrician for Zane, we were meeting with people and we were kind of going, listen, these are all of the views. What do you think of this? And we went,
the one that was like, what's that?
yeah, we went into one pediatrician and we were like, okay, so what do you think about, all these holistic approaches? And she just looked at us and she was like, what?
She was
It's
like,
like,
oh, what's that? I've never heard of that.
Holistic
I was
approach,
like,
the things they've been
don't-
talking about for like 20 years what do you mean, you've never heard of that before?
It was just
like
such
you're
a
doing
shutdown.
such a
It's a
disservice
shutdown.
to people
Look,
that are looking for information.
I agree, and I don't think it's the whole medical community,
No,
right? It's
absolutely
definitely
not.
for
it's
sure.
definitely individualized. But I have clients all the time, right? I'm coaching people, and people are coming to me with all the sorts of health things. Not coming to me for it, but they're like, I have autoimmunity. Here's what's
Yeah.
going on, and it's my job. Obviously, I can't help them or cure them in that area, but it's my job to say, have you thought of this? Have you looked into this? What has your
To make
GP said?
suggestions.
Have you gone to a specialist? Have you looked into this area? And unfortunately, what I do here is there are incredible doctors out there who some are on the cutting edge, some at least are open-minded and willing to look at natural remedies, things that people have been using for hundreds or thousands of years in some countries who are getting better. Like, for instance, I had high uric acid, and my doctor was like, sometimes Western medicine is better to treat things. Sometimes there's an alternative that works well. He's like, try tart cherry. I took tart cherry. It dropped dramatically. And it's like, it's tart cherry.
Yeah. And that's where you come in, because I feel like you've blended these two worlds in your practice, your information. And what I love when we come to you is that there's never a push for one way. It's always a conversation of these are the options. What do you feel comfortable with? For a family, because so many of our audience have kids, right? I would say 95% of our audience has kids. For those parents that are skeptical and in a place of distrust, but they don't have a Joel Gator to go to, how can they make great decisions for their kids and find information?
So for a lot of things, especially when it comes to, let's say, just medicine and going to your doctor, if you don't trust your doctor and you can't have conversations, I think it's okay to switch doctors. I think that's the
Right.
first thing that people have to realize is sometimes they're scared. They feel like they've been somewhere. And trust me, doctors don't care. There's no shortage of patients. And if you don't feel like that doctor's a good fit for you, then we don't take it personally. Basically all doctors would say the same thing. Like, if you don't feel like you're a good fit for this practice, then please let us know. We're happy to switch and transfer your records.
Right.
And we want you to be somewhere, or at least I want you to be somewhere where that you feel comfortable. And if that's not me, then that's fine.
Right.
So find somewhere where that you feel like you can trust. Now, if you're integrative minded, not every place has an integrative practitioner. You might be able to find one, you might not. But sometimes you can also have multiple practitioners. So what I recommend to parents who might live somewhere more rural or don't have a practitioner or can't, some doctors, they charge a lot of money if they're integrative, so they can't necessarily afford it. But you can certainly work with two practitioners. You can have a doctor you can go to make sure that we don't have an ear infection, and then you can work with a naturopathic doctor or somebody else who's familiar with kids, and you can discuss your holistic things. So you're ruling out the serious stuff, but then still working with another practitioner in a holistic way. But it is hard because a lot of the information out there is very polarizing, whether it comes to medicine or parenting. That's even one of the reasons why I wrote the book in the first place, is really bringing it back to integrative parenting, right? Because as a pediatrician, I realized that most of the questions that I get were really not about medicine. They're more about parenting. You get a lot of the questions about tantrums and behavior and potty training and all of these things. But then very similarly, you go online and it's like, this is the right way to potty train. And if you do anything else, you're a terrible parent, or you gotta,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
you
So
gotta do
much
baby-led
shaming.
weaning,
Oh, yeah.
I've
or
recently
periods.
been looking at all the research on biting and hitting because our 2-year-old is at that stage. Integrative parenting. Tell me more about what this means.
So I wanted to do something similar to integrative medicine, bringing the different philosophies together, talking about the different philosophies, and then helping parents make the best decision for them. There is no one right way to do almost anything. There are very few things in parenting or pediatrics that have so much research that's the only way to do it. So I think it's important to learn how to think through the issues, because there is no book or program that's really going to be perfect for you or figure out everything for you, because you figure it out as you go. Parenting is literally, you watch your kid, you see what they do, you learn, and then it's kind of this gradual cycle of figuring out what works best for them. And so to me, the best way to make decisions as a parent and to feel confident is to learn about the different modalities that are out there, synthesize that information, and do what you feel like is best for your family. You trust your parenting gut and then go with it. But if you read online and you look at all of these things and it makes you stress out all the time, that's not going to be the best way to parent, because it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole. And,
Absolutely.
let's say just trying to feed your child, a 6-month-old. Do I do baby-led weaning, which is, give them little pieces of food, or do I do purees, right? And a lot of the online stuff says, oh, you got to do baby-led weaning because it's so much better for them, and it's better so they won't be obese, and it's better so that they'll have better motor control, and all these things that you read about. But then the parents are so stressed in the office because they're worried their kid's going to choke.
That exact thing
Right.
is not working.
That
right?
was my existence with Zane, like the panic on me for him choking. But I did a blend of both.
And
Wherever I felt comfortable, whatever my gut told me was okay. But it doesn't mean I didn't freak out when he had chunks of
I think
food there
parents
with
do a
him.
huge disservice to themselves sometimes. It's like you were saying, there's not one right way to do it. Every single child is different and reacts to a different thing. Likes eating a certain way, likes being spoken to a different way. So it's up to us as parents to pay attention to those signs and do what works with each child.
Right, and be informed. Like, I think it's okay to be informed. A lot of people say, don't Google, medicine here, don't Google. And that's not true. It's good to be informed. It's just, you have to know how to do it. And you have to understand what you're seeing is going to be extreme. It's going to take you to the worst possible place, because everything is about liability or fear or shock value or whatever it is. And that's not...
WebMD is like the...
No, you know what's worse?
People always joke about
You know
that.
what's worse than WebMD and Googling things now? It's Instagram.
It's social media.
It's the stories that you hear. You now have access to all of these stories that are probably a 1 in a million chance of the kid, the 4-year-old that popcorn went in the lungs, or maybe not 1 in a million, but you're now exposed to all these things. So as a new parent, all it does is flood your mind. So as I'm doing baby-led weaning, I'm also on my Instagram, that damn algorithm that gives you the things that relate to you. I'm seeing stories of people that lost their infants through choking, through trying food. And now I'm paralyzed with fear because there's all this research to say this is great. But then there's this person that lost their baby.
That had some terrible, freak accident. Of, it was a shirt with a tight collar, so don't ever do shirts with,
What was the one
with short sleeves. And it's like, it's impossible.
Right.
There was the 4 mums chair that we had, and there was sudden recall because a baby suddenly got tangled in the power cord for it, and it was like
Right, and it's
that thing goes in the trash.
They've always
now,
had power
you know?
cords. Like, how am I going to buy a chair without a power cord? Like, how am I going to?
Yeah, it's
But
paralyzing.
it's
to be
crazy that
honest.
it creates that fear for people.
And I think that's where we are. And people are seeing this constant stream of fear, especially if you engage with that on your stream, because it gets to know you. And then you have a constant stream of all the stuff that you're learning about, and then all the other stuff in the world.
Yeah.
And it becomes really difficult to be a parent,
navigate.
as opposed to what it was 50 years ago, where you just ask grandma and your cousin, and
That's
like,
it.
Yeah.
How,
That's all
how
you
do
had.
you feed? Oh, you feed this way? Okay, cool. And you
Right.
just try it. And that, to some degree, is so much easier. I mean, yes, it's good because we have more information, but
Sure.
it becomes paralyzing.
Yes, it really,
we
really
learned
does.
that dipping the passy in alcohol, because they're not sleeping very well, might not be the best approach.
But if you did
it
it for
could
yourself,
work.
if you did
It
it for
could work.
yourself, then great
Right,
parent.
totally.
That would be a great
That would be a
little
shot for
video
me,
of the
and then
parents
a
sucking
big-
on pacifiers going,
just trying to fall asleep.
I've seen pictures, the old medical offices. They have the corner with the alcohol and they have drugs out there and everything. These all this stuff was legal many years ago. It's like, well, the pediatrician visits are probably a lot better 100 years ago. I don't know.
This cocaine is really helping them sleep.
really, really good.
My kid's really focused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they used to have codeine was normal, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was what
Yeah.
so they did the reresearch and it shows it doesn't help for coughs, but it probably helped for coughs because they were happy.
Yeah.
right,
sleeping,
exactly.
For a
They
period of
forgot
time.
that they had a
period of
tickle
time.
in their throat
Yeah.
because
But the side effects, right? It's like,
Right.
that's where we are.
Speaking of side effects, we talked a little bit about, and I want to get into it more, but the mental health state of our kids and this experience they're having through social media, school, whatever they get, they're exposed. And even our 11 and 12, no, ours, but 11 and 12 and 13-year-olds, our preteens, are suffering with anxiety and depression.
Seems higher than ever.
Higher than ever,
right now.
Much higher than
absolutely.
ever. It's crazy.
And I hear
Yeah.
about it all the time. And I guess it's a two-part question. I think it's obviously the world that we live in and it's social media. Is it also food? And then what are some ways that you can treat it as a parent, but you are not willing to go down the route of like Western anxiety medication? Because for me, if that were to happen hypothetically in our family, I would try everything except, I don't even know what they're called. The anti-anxiety, yeah. And I have no issue with people that do take them, but for such a young body who they're still trying to learn how to regulate, I think we're doing them a disservice by
Right. To me, if there's anxiety,
numbing
you don't find
them.
a psychiatrist and just pump
So
them full of-
obviously therapy, but what avenues do you take? I think parents feel at an absolute loss right now witnessing their kids experiencing this depression and anxiety.
Yes, I mean, I think the first place to start is where we are, which is not great. Like you said, the mental health crisis is worse than ever. If you look at the stats, 50% of teens by the age of 18 have a mental health diagnosis.
That's devastating.
Can you say that again?
50% of 18-year-olds have a mental health diagnosis at some point in the first 18 years, which is that's insane where we are now. 1/3 of teen girls thinks about suicide. 1/4.
You said 1/3?
1/3. 1/4 has a plan, and 1 out of 10 tried. Right?
Self-harming.
Self-harming, like that. Those numbers, you don't think about it, and then you hear things like that, like really, but those
You
are the
hear
stats.
the numbers,
Those
yeah.
are the stats.
Those are-
Like anxiety.
That's the science.
Depression. These are like 10, 20%. Like it's huge numbers. It depends on which study you look at, but it doesn't really matter. It's just so massive that it's insane, and like you said, there are just so many children taking medications, and that has to be a last resort. It's not the wrong thing to do sometimes. Sometimes you need it. It can save your life. But we shouldn't be at a place in society where we have to give medications out daily for our children for their mental health at such high rates. It should be something that's rare, that's needed in an extreme, but it's extraordinarily common. And so that, to me, says that there is a lot wrong. It's not a simple solution. There's no simple solution to this, but there are so many things that we need to be doing. Certainly social media is a big part of it, and you mentioned that in the phones. I mean, thankfully, it is in the news a lot more this year, and Jonathan Haidt's book really has brought that into conversation, and schools are starting to ban cell phones, and even Los
Yeah.
Angeles County is banning it next year, so it's going to be interesting to see how that goes and what they do. I think that social media is not great for any of us, but certainly for teens, it's devastating to their mental health. They
Absolutely.
just haven't been in the world long enough to have some perspective. It's hard enough for anybody,
Right.
but very clearly it's not working. And I think that we need to get kids off of phones earlier. No screens or social media on your phones till they're older. I think that will make a big difference, but it's just one small part of it.
I just had a light bulb moment, which happens rarely, but you said something and it really hit me. Social media, it's not working. And I thought, wow, there's other apps that are solutions to things. Right? You get an app because it's easier to, pay your
Organize your
credit
day,
card
right.
bills or organize or schedule. What are we using these apps for? What is the solution? Because I feel like the undercover solution is connection. That's what people are looking for.
Socializing.
Right.
Socializing,
Yeah.
staying in touch with. But are people really realizing that, and is it working to achieve that?
I think, but based on the research, most kids realize that it's not good for them. You ask them, and 9 out of 10 kids say they wish they wouldn't be on social media, but they feel like they have to.
All their friends are on it,
Right,
and
and-
if they're not, then they're missing out on
Right.
something.
And I think the world has moved to this like almost social credit of the social media, how many followers you have, how many likes you get. And for that system to change, that's going to have to change. I mean, the companies are going to have to change at some point to change the algorithms to make it less about fear and division and seeing all the horrible things and really more to, fun stuff. Like it used to be fun to be on social media. You used to connect with your friends. You used to see puppies and funny videos and architecture and coffee and food, and now you just see people getting angry at each other. And it
Right.
doesn't have to be that way, but that is where things are going. In the short term, they're probably not going to change, so you have to change. Maybe you have to curate your feed or make sure your kids are not on it till they're a little bit older, or maybe they don't have it on their phone but just have it on their computer so that they're on it some of the time. I'm not against screens. I think screens have become like the boogeyman of, we should never have our kids on screens, but they're not going anywhere.
Right.
So I think it just has to be curated screen time and reasonable screen time, because teens are on screen 7 to 9 hours a day on average, which is
That's
insane.
insane.
That's insane too.
7 to 10 hours a day.
How are they even on?
Yeah.
Because schoolwork,
Because
and then
they're sitting in
phones and
class
games,
on
and so you add it all together, and it's just such a massive number. And the screen in of itself is not the problem. It's what they're not doing. They're not getting outside. They're not moving. Not eating. Cooking. They're not with their family. They're not with their friends. They're in front of that screen. So yes, you can learn something on a screen. Yes, you can do your homework on a screen. I don't think those are the problem. It's that we're on it for so long, and so much of this energy drain and stress just from scrolling all day, being on it. And so I think there just needs to be controls. I think we're moving that way. I really do. I think this year we're seeing that people are really recognizing just how bad it is. But if we trust the companies to self-regulate, that's probably not going to happen.
Oh, no, of course not.
So we're going to have
They
to.
want it as addictive as possible.
Right.
They want-
Randy is amazing with his girls and with screen time. He certainly has been much stricter on it than we. Did you say yesterday this was the first time your girls went to a movie theater?
My girls, they've been to a movie theater to watch like National Theater Live, and so it's been a production of a stage show.
So
that they
not a
reshow.
movie theater, a
but
theater.
But no, they've been to a
movie
movie
theater
theater
was a
to
video on the
watch
stage.
watch a play, to watch the rebroadcasting of. They've
Got
never
it.
been to a movie until
They are 16
a couple weeks ago. No, not 16.
How old are they?
13 and 11.
Oh, 13 and 11.
13
My
and
bad.
11.
Impressive. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
one.
impressive.
On a plane, they've seen a
First-
handful of movies.
First
Yes.
movie they've seen in a theater.
That's it, which is amazing. I love that.
It's amazing.
We went through like a come to Jesus moment in our house. It just crept up on us. We definitely haven't been like, here, just have them or use them as babysitters. But we just got so lax and relaxed, and then suddenly realized our kids weren't speaking to us. Like we
happened
would
so
try
quickly.
and have family dinners and do our gratitude practice, and it was one word
We did a
answers.
whole digital detox. It
for
was
pretty
a-
much 3 weeks.
Yeah,
it was zero
like
screens.
0 screens, and then it went down to like, okay, you only get them like 2 days a week for an hour on those 2 days. So it became something that they looked forward to, and they got in, but then they were fine going, okay, done with
Yeah.
that. Like, let's go now play a
They
game.
got really
or
good.
do
Right.
things.
And this was a long time ago now. And I will say, not games, they super respect the boundaries on games and they're great, but TV has crept in a lot. And our 10-year-old he just loves that television. Like, he would sit and watch Miss Rachel with Zane
With
all
Zane.
day. And he did like,
He'll
it's-
just be like zoned out. And it's-
and so
really
I've
good.
noticed that it just by not watching it, it's crept in more and more and more, and they've gotten a little bit more lazy and wanting to just do those things. It's something to constantly be mindful of. Like, we're not going to do another detox, but we're going to go back to resetting
Yeah.
those boundaries again.
And I just want to say that that is the perfect way to think about it, I think, because you don't want parents to feel shamed or feel like they're doing something wrong or harming their kids. But if there is something that you learn or you become more mindful or aware that, maybe we're watching too much TV or maybe we're not eating the healthiest, then you make different decisions that day or the next day and you kind of move in a different direction. It's not an all or none. We have amazing bodies and amazing detoxification systems, and just because you watched a bunch of TV yesterday doesn't mean you have to do it tomorrow, and doesn't
Right.
mean you've screwed up your children for life because you watched some TV.
Right.
I think it's just that we have to remember that these things build up over time, and if you eat a little bit of crappy food every day, well, that adds up over many, many years, and that's what leads you to a chronic disease. Like, there was this great study out of Harvard where they used soup, and I love this study because what they did is they took a bunch of patients and they gave them canned soup, and then they gave them homemade soup for 5 days, and they were looking at the BPA levels in urine, and the BPA from the 5 days where they gave them the canned soup to the 5 days where they gave them the homemade soup was 1,000% difference.
Wow.
Just from those 5 days. So it's a really great example just to say, if you make a little different choice, it can make a big difference. Now, if a little bit of BPA is probably not going to have any major concerns for you, but if you do it every single day, you're having the canned soup, you have the lining on there that has the BPA, and you're getting that every single day, it starts to add up, and then all the other chemicals start to add up. And so if you make a little change that's different, like making a few more meals at home, or you read the label and you buy the product that has a little bit better ingredients, then it doesn't have to be perfect, but it matters. And for some kids, that's going to be perfect, and that's going to be enough, and they're going to be healthy. But if we aren't mindful of those decisions and the things that we're doing, then we're going to be the next statistic. I mean, we see what those numbers are, and it's not to scare people, but 1 out of 2 kids have a chronic disease. If you don't care about that, and you are okay living the same way that most Western people live, then 1 out of 2 of your kids are going to probably have a chronic disease, and that's up to each parent
And that's
to
so
decide.
You say not to scare people,
But it's
how
not
does
to
that
scare
not
people.
That's terrifying.
But,
Yeah.
but if you want to do something different, then you have to take it into your own
Yeah.
hands.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say, is that
Right.
it's not to scare people. It's just to be mindful that here's where we are. And so it's not going to change. Like, medicine's not going to change overnight. So we have to be mindful of these things and make some choices that are different for our family. Not every single thing, but little things here or there, because we see what the numbers are, and they're not great.
This is what
they're
I
not
think is
great.
really refreshing, though, is your perspective on it. This whole thing is if systems aren't going to change overnight, and that could probably span many different systems, what can we do? How do we take this into our own hands? How are we informed enough to make a decision to say, okay, how can we do a little bit better? How can we make a better choice? And something that you said, again, really stuck out to me was, what are we not doing? So that extra screen time is, okay, we have that, but what is that taking the place of? Could we go outside and play a little bit more? Could we get more connective time where there may have been a moment that we remember 50 years from now and go, it was that moment that instead of watching the movie, because that's just, what they do at that time, we went outside and we all played a game together, and it was that little moment that it was at sunset and it was just regular family time, but the kids grow up and they have the memory of that regular moment.
Yeah, those things. I mean, the things that our kids remember with us are the things like that. It's not honestly even going to the movies.
It's the micro moments.
It's the we all went on a bike ride throughout the neighborhood, or Zane was with us, or like all those little things. I will say something that helps on the nutrition side, and something that has been a huge help for me, is an app that I use. Is a little carrot on it, and I want to say it's called Yuka or Yaka.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah, I think Yuka.
Yuka? Yeah, Yuka, I think. And you can scan any barcode, and it gives you a rating of where it's at, and if there's anything that is dangerous in it, the sugar content. Like, I'll show you it. It's absolutely amazing. I used it just this morning on a yogurt because I was like, I don't think that's a good one. It wasn't me that bought it, and I scanned it, and I was like, all right, it's got like a 94% rating, so I'm not going to freak out about it. But it's been really, really helpful for me. It's YUKA if any parents are interested.
Can I just say something? So that is a great second step for most parents. Let's start with just reading the label. I think that's the first thing to do.
Yeah,
That is
totally.
a great second step. And if you want to go for it, then that is amazing. But to be, even what I push as the number one thing that I ask parents to do, if there's one thing they could change, is just read every label for everything that you purchase from now on. If you don't know what the word is on there, then it's probably not good for you. You don't have to get a PhD in chemistry if it's some long chemically name.
Yeah.
Just get the thing with the words that you actually know. You're going to get a long way.
So you know what one kills me here? It's bread. In Australia, I'm going to say this so many times in this conversation. I say it all the time. In Australia, bread tastes completely different. When I first moved here, and my first taste of bread, I thought I picked up a sweet bread. I was like, oh, I picked up the wrong thing. Little did I know every bread tasted sweet to me because of the corn syrup or whatever it was. Literal just sugar in this bread. But now when I look at it, like, some of those ingredients lists are the length of my hand on the back of it, and it's all chemicals. It's all made in a lab. It's not fluffy because it was cooked well. It's fluffy because of a chemical that's also in yoga mats.
Because
Like,
it was
it's-
yoga mats. Yeah,
a
yeah.
chemical
Right.
to, balance the other
Preserve.
chemical to balance the other chemical. And they just have,
suddenly, and so I explain that to our kids, like, not so much about bread, but when they come home with Halloween candy or whatever it is that they want to eat. And I'm like, baby, listen to me. None of this is food. I know it looks like it, but this Red 40 and whatever, these were all made in a lab. And these are the things that can happen with it. And oddly, like, they respond well to that. Like, oh, you mean it's not actual food? Because kids don't know the difference.
We swap out candy for for Halloween.
We do too,
Like,
but I got in a lot
they
of
trick or
a lot of
treat.
crap for that one.
They trick or treat, and then we go, okay, so now we're going to give this candy to somebody else, and we're going to instead go and we're going to buy the healthiest candy we can find.
Yeah.
We talked about this season 1.
We did.
Because it was around Halloween. Some family posted on social media how they do the switch witch thing
I
where it
posted
comes
it,
in. People were
nuts.
outraged.
Let them have their Halloween. I'm like, no, don't let them have poison.
Right.
Let them have Halloween
Right.
with like either
Yeah.
people got to give better candy.
I have
or-
to be a parent. Like,
Yeah.
I have to make the choices that serve the kids the best.
Right.
Why am I going to crack my kid out on any day of the year with
Right.
horrible like poison and chemicals and things?
So I have an interesting question about nutrition because I have spoken with and talked to people who are dietitians. They're looking at studies and they're looking at, is it in vitro or in vivo? Which one?
Wait, for what?
For studies of nutrition, where they are taking this so-called chemical, let's say, and they are looking at this
In a
study-
lab, because the lab would be in vitro. Out in the real world would be.
in vitro.
Yeah.
It was in vitro. And what they saw was that it didn't have the effect that influencers and people and like seed oils, let's say, right? They take seed oils and a lot of people are like, oh, seed oils, bad, bad, bad. But then in vitro, what they see is that actually it brought down lipids and it helped with this and it helped with that. So really, it's okay. And all of this is just misinformation. What do you say to something like that? Like how to look at that?
I think that you can find studies to show anything. And number one, a lot of these studies have funding from special interest that wants to find something on the other side. So they're going to look at it in a certain way. I did a master's in epidemiology a long time ago now, and you really realize you can make the numbers look any way that you want to if you know how to do it. And so I think
that's so devastating. Like just to hear that there's a study for anything, you can make the
Right.
numbers look
They're
any
not
way.
actually factual.
You can
as it
find
is.
anything, but it doesn't mean that research is not useful. Like you can do excellent research to answer questions, but to me, when it comes to food, you really have to look at, well, what's going on with our health, right? So obviously our health is not good, so the way that we're eating is not good anymore. So many things have to be wrong or not the best, and if it's made artificially in a lab with a bunch of chemicals, it's probably not good for you. And even if they find something in a lab that shows that it's not exactly showing what you want, to me, that's probably not what's actually happening in your body. And what's probably happening in your body is it's causing inflammation. And what's most likely happening is it's causing you and your kids to get sick. So eat real food that's picked from a garden and you'll do just fine. And everything else, maybe it's okay, maybe, but why would you roll the dice on that? I think it's very unlikely that the things that are ultra processed that are not even close to real food are going to be good for you. I mean, the basic simple thing to think about is if you go to a farm or a garden, you pick a berry, how long does it last? Like 3 days?
Yeah.
4 days, maybe. When was the food at the grocery store picked?
Right,
Like it was
right.
in some other country, flown across or shipped across, then it goes in some warehouse, then it goes to the store, then you get it, then you take it home. That's the best kind of food that you can get in general at a grocery store. And how many things has it been sprayed in to keep it looking okay, even for
Yeah.
a good fruit? So if we're not getting things that are local, if we're not going to farmers markets, if we're not getting to know our farmers, then the best food that you can get is still sprayed in all sorts of chemicals to preserve it. Then
Even while it's in the grocery
even
store.
when it's in the grocery store. I mean, you look at an apple; it's all sprayed in wax and coated.
Now I've heard, and maybe they're misleading me on it, but I've actually heard that it's better to at a grocery store buy frozen fruit because it is it's flash frozen.
Flash frozen.
At the point when it's picked, so you're actually getting a much
The
better
most
quality.
nutrients,
Yeah, and
supposedly.
so that's one theory, right? And that makes sense to be in terms of, to some degree because they don't have to spray it in as many chemicals, so that way it doesn't go bad. But then I'm sure freezing does some things to it too in terms of the nutrients. Then you have to unfreeze it and warm it up. So I don't know. I'm
Right.
sure it matters on each food.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, the more chemicals that we have, the worse for us, right? And so if
Right.
we're not getting things locally, and if you don't know where you're getting it from, then it's probably going to create issues, right? I think that's just common sense, and that's where we're at. And that is the food you get in the produce aisles. Then a lot of people are getting the other food in the middle of the store, which is processed in boxes, in plastic, and you're getting that, which is probably 5, 10, 20, 100 times worse in terms of the chemicals and not even close to real food anymore. So at least what you could do to the best of your ability is to get real food, and then as much as you can start to work towards going to farmers markets and things like that. It's not always possible for everybody, but
Right.
the reality is if we don't figure out a way to do that, then we're just going to keep getting sick. I mean, that's just where we are. That's what the food is.
So in your practice, in terms of nutrition, can you share a story with us of where you have seen a family suffering from something, a child, and nutrition or diet has helped that situation?
Yeah, back when I was in the hospital, this was one of the cases that really led me to learn about integrative medicine. There was a child who was obese and was coming into the hospital every couple weeks for all sorts of different conditions, autoimmune conditions, terrible rashes. And I happened to be on this child's team at one point, and he had been in there multiple times. And I walked in the room and was his doctor and saw there was just snacks and candy everywhere. And so when I was talking on rounds, I had mentioned, maybe we need to think about the diet, and everybody kind of just shrugged it off. But after grandma came to me and said, I don't think he eats very well. He does have a lot of candy. He does have a lot of snacks. And I've always been worried about this, but the parents just kind of brush it off. But, do you think you could be his doctor? And then maybe we could work on this? Because I do think it makes a big difference. And I notice when he eats these foods, it flares everything up. So he ended up coming to me in the clinic, and we ended up changing up his diet and ended up getting him to exercise a little bit more and getting involved in some sports. And he stopped going to the hospital. He got better. Like all the conditions went away, and it was over a few months that he got better. And it was one of those scenarios where it was like, oh, why is nobody thinking about this? Why is this like laughed at when we talk about it as being the cause? And why are we giving this kid a medication when really it's just that he's very clearly eating a lot of bad food, and maybe we should start with that and then work our way back.
Do you think we're still, not all of us, I think this opinion is changing, but for some parents, do you think they're still under the idea of like, oh, it's just a little baby weight, it's just a little chubby, it's just a little like nothing to worry about, and thinking that bad food only relates to heavier weight instead of really understanding that these bad foods and these chemicals can create all of these different conditions? Do you think we're still not quite understanding the correlation between the two?
I think that is one of the biggest problems we face right now for our health, is that most people don't realize that the little choices that they make matter, because a lot of us didn't eat that healthy when we grew up. A lot of our parents and grandparents, kind of moved from we cook all the time to TV dinners, and things were faster and easier and cheaper, which to some degree can be good, but you lose something for faster and cheaper, which is your health. You lose the quality, and we've moved in that direction. Most of us or our parents never really learned to cook, didn't have that time, the family time, and so we moved to that processed food, and we're like, oh, well, we ate that when we were little, and we turned out okay.
Right, all the time I hear that. I did it, and I'm fine.
And then you also talk to those same people, and they have multiple medical conditions.
Absolutely.
And also, you also talk to them 3 years later after they clean up their diet, and they're like, oh, man, I didn't even realize how many issues I was having. So I think that we don't correlate it, and we also don't realize that it might not affect you today, or you might not realize that it affects you today, but it affects them 5 years from now or 10 years ago. And nothing will teach you that more than being a parent who's a little bit health conscious on food, and then watching your kid go to a party and eating the things that you don't usually give them.
Right.
And then watching their behavior the rest of the day, and you're like, this is a different child from eating one piece of cake.
Right.
And then it makes me think, I'm like, well, what about all these other kids that have these mental health issues when they're little, or that have serious behavioral issues, that are eating this food all of the time?
Yeah.
Is it the food? Is it just the food? Because maybe if you clean up the food, they wouldn't have that anymore, because I see how my kid acts with just having one piece of cake.
Right.
And he's a completely different child. So do we think that maybe we should start cleaning that up first before we give this kid a medication, and maybe those symptoms will go away? Not always, but I bet you a lot of times it would.
Yeah, and I think people make the mistake of looking at all children or all people as equal, in terms of my metabolism is the same as yours, and what some children can metabolize sugar-wise, other children can't. Some kids do really well with gluten and other things, and some children have a reaction to it and can't. So it's really important to take a look at what, what's right for you.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's, again, going back to even the title, like parenting at your child's pace,
right.
Because it's focusing on your own child and their own situation. Because when you get into this conversation, as soon as I do online, I get a lot of attacks for like, oh, well, they have different genetics. I'm like, yes, everybody has different genetics, and that affects the way that you metabolize. It affects who is more susceptible. But it doesn't change the fact that if you're eating really crappy, then it's going to affect everybody.
The commonality
just differently.
is that you're all eating crappy food, whether like your body processes it better or not. Like it's still shitty food.
Right, genetics is
That's
a part
we've talked
of it.
about it before.
Yeah.
Like I think people they're backwards on this sense of they go into a grocery store that is a better one, and they complain about, oh, but it's so expensive. It's like, well, it's either expensive now or it's expensive later. It's going to be expensive either at the hospital when you're dealing with the issues from the cheap food you're eating, or you're going to pay the money now to get the better food.
Right, and again, that's another big topic that I get yelled at a lot at, and it's like, okay, but you have to make choices that work for your family and your health, and we have to figure out a way to do it. Now, yes, sometimes it is more expensive, and that's a society problem, and that's a bigger problem. That's something that we do need to deal with as a society so we can make that food cheaper. But you, as a family, have to figure out how you can make it work for you and do the best that you can within your budget. And not all better food has to be more expensive. You can certainly look at 2 bag of chips. They could be the same price with different ingredients, and you can pick the one that's better. Sometimes you can get things directly from farmers or producers, and you cut out the middleman because you just order it straight from them, and it's much cheaper.
Yeah.
That's why we're fans of farmers markets.
We
Yeah.
we go.
They're great.
Yeah, I mean, some farmers markets are more expensive.
Oh,
it
the
seems
Calabasas
like,
one
right?
is, let me
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
you that.
For sure,
Some
but
of them
still,
are.
I mean, the
Calabasas
fact
is
that you are
airborne
dealing
status.
directly with the grower or the it's
But I
amazing.
talk to the farmers. It's one of the most empowering things that I learned years ago is having a relationship with the people who were growing your food.
Right.
And we would talk about soil and dirt, and they were geeking out on all these things. And I walked away, and my heart was beating fast, and I was shining, and I thought, wow, this is amazing because there's such care and consideration about the dirt and the topsoil and nutrients and trying to get the most nutrient dense food, not, oh, this looks exactly perfect.
I love how excited you get about their excitement.
Right?
over it.
Yeah, but it's the right thing to get excited about
It's
because that's what we
amazing.
should be excited about. We should be excited
it's-
about good food
God,
and not
I
the
love
pretty
it.
food. Right, that's
Yeah,
what you're
not the
saying.
pretty
I
food.
agree with you. Like, your
Yeah.
apples are not supposed to be perfectly round and shiny with no, like, bugs are supposed to eat them. Right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
that's a good food. Like if
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a blemish here or there,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you go to the store, go to Whole Foods, look at the sign in the produce. You can be like, we put wax on this product and this product and this product and this product. Okay, I get it. They want it to be more shiny. They want it to last longer, but I'm sure in 5 or 10 years we're going to be like, oh, we shouldn't have been doing that.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You know, and
It looked better for the second before I ate it and I went in.
So talk to us about your book, okay?
The first
Parenting
3
at your
years.
child's pace. What led you to write this book?
So the kind of path was, again, with the integrative medicine and starting to see that people were really resonating with that integrative medicine aspect of my practice, but there wasn't a lot of it online. So I started talking about it online on social media, and that started to grow a lot as well. But then realizing that you can only talk so much on social media. Everything's small snippets, and you can't really get into any details. And I really wanted to get to parents early, talk to parents before their kids got to me, and talk about the first few years and set the stage for health and wellness. So talking about all the questions that I get in the office all the time, all the regular parenting questions that we get as pediatricians, but speaking about it from an integrative perspective, talking about both sides or the multiple different perspectives that there could be and helping parents to make a decision. Parents are more stressed than ever, so trying to help people to de-stress from a lot of these questions and help them think through, and also write a parenting book that starts with a focus on health. And the first chapter is about health and wellness and de-stressing, as opposed to jumping into all the regular parenting questions that we get. Because most books now are written by therapists or moms, and there's a lot of great books out there, but they're missing that health aspect. And I think we need that as part of our parenting, and we need to talk about these things at day one, so they're not in my office when they're 5 with eczema or allergies or an autoimmune condition, but that is what's happening. So I really wanted to start from day one.
I love that. So you reverse engineered it. You started with what you're seeing in your practice, what the statistics show, and as a doctor, as a parent, looking at what can parents do now to start to be informed, to make better decisions, to de-stress, and the right things to look at.
Yeah, I really tried to talk about simple solutions or things that parents can actually do, because there's so many bigger topics, right? Like we're talking about, oh, you're not going to change the air outside that we breathe, but you can add plants to your house to improve the air. You can add a filter. You're not going to change the water, but you could filter it. You are not going to grow all your own food or change the system, but you could buy at a farmer's market. So I start with the foundations or the seeds of health and the Dr. Gator smoothie. So it's kind of a
Ooh, the Dr. Gator smoothie.
Right.
Please,
all right.
what is
Right.
this Dr.
Yeah,
Gator
Why don't we
smoothie?
have those now in our Oldish
I
runs?
know.
Why don't we have one?
Yeah.
What
Because
is
it's a
it?
metaphorical smoothie. That's why.
Oh,
Sure.
Okay, got you.
That's
All
why.
right.
Yeah. So you know how on all the
Well, bring a physical one next
I'll bring
time.
a physical one with
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah. Because I love smoothies. I'm a big fan of it. So nothing against smoothies, but you know when you watch on the daytime TV shows and the guru air quotes goes on and says, oh, you put on this and this and this and the celery and it will cure everything, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
celery juice.
Exactly. And
for everything.
there's no such thing that cures everything. What really we need to focus on is the foundation. So I start with a big scoop of the seeds being stress, environment and toxins, exercise, diet, and sleep, and then throwing in some vitamin D, getting outside, sunlight, family time, community, love, a happy household, like all the things that actually matter for health and focusing on those. And the Dr. Gator smoothie is kind of the play on the
So
things.
it is a metaphor.
Yeah.
It's a metaphorical smoothie, but you can still have smoothies. I still like them. And
Got
they're
it.
great.
Okay.
They're still really great.
Right. Could I have an actual smoothie while I'm doing
Next
the-
time I come
the
back, I'll
Dr.
bring an
Gator
actual smoothie.
This would be
Fantastic.
amazing. What I love about what you're explaining about this book is that it sounds easily digestible. And as someone that did read baby books, some of it I was just overwhelmed with words and things, and it was like it's just too much. But this sounds like really easily digestible information that you can put into practice, and I think that's so important too, because there is an overwhelm of knowledge and books out there, but they're really not written for new parents to actually understand them. They've got all these things that you got to then research those words to know what that means, and you're back to square one. So I'm really appreciative that you wrote a book like this. Why is it just the first 3 years?
I think that is the foundational period where our kids are really moving in a direction in terms of their health. And so, one, there's a practicality. Can't write a book for all the, yes, you could, but it'd be really, really long. So just like you said, I want a digestible book that is relevant to new parents who are looking to really focus on setting their kids on the right path and answering the questions that we get. I think the older kids, especially in the office too, I think that's the way I thought about it too. The older kids, I get very different questions from parents than I get in the first couple of years. If you're looking at a teen, they're not really worried about potty training.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a different set of questions for older kids and, maybe a book in the future. But for this one, I think that it was really important to get to parents before.
Yeah.
And also, just like you said, I think most people do read a book as a parent during pregnancy. I think that's the time where you really are looking to learn and prepare.
For sure, because
You're in freak out mode. What do you
Right.
mean? You're
Yeah.
like, I need to know something more than what I know.
Give
to
me
do this.
everything because I only have 9 months.
I'm not equipped for this.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, for this book, if someone doesn't have children, how can they benefit from reading this? Because when I'm hearing you talk about all this, all I keep thinking is this would be good for parents who have an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old or parents, people who don't have children, because there's still a foundational element to this. That smoothie that you talked about, these
That's
are
life.
basics. Go outside more, get vitamin D, play, be with friends, family, community. These things are really foundational to health, and I feel like everyone can benefit from that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sections in the book that could benefit anybody because it's not specific to an age. It's more teaching people how to think or talking through how I think about things so that way it can help them with the decisions that they make. So it may not be the specific topic that might be relevant to you if you have a teenager, but the way that you think through it can be. And a lot of certainly the first chapter and the last few chapters is about health and wellness and having a healthy home and detoxifying your home. So all of that would be relevant to just about anybody. Yeah.
Excellent.
Incredible.
Dr. Joel Gator Warsh. Dr. Joel Gator Warsh. Did I
Is
say
it
that
Warsh?
right?
Warsh, yeah, Warsh.
Yeah.
Warsh?
Yeah.
I don't
My
know. The
Aussie
first time I
accent,
was
I'm
like,
like,
Warsh.
Warsh.
You didn't say Walsh, so that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
You said Walsh.
Yeah, no, there was no element.
Let's try it again. How about Dr. Joel? Thank you for being with us. Thank you for writing this book. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people out there. So thank you for what you do.
Yeah, it's been amazing having you on here. I feel like there's so much more we can talk about, and we will, and hopefully we can have you come back to us again. But for everyone listening, please make sure you check out this book, Parenting at Your Child's Pace by Joel Warsh, MD. It sounds like an incredible book. I certainly want to read it. We're at the potty training stage, so this is going to become key for me. Thank you, everybody, for listening and tuning in. I hope you loved this episode as much as we did. If you do not already, please follow, like, and subscribe. It truly helps us more than you know. It helps bring us incredible guests like Dr. Joel right here and create the content that we do for you. So go ahead and do that. We do actually offer watching our podcast on video now. So if you are interested in that, you can head over to oldishpodcast.com. And if you are tuned in with us now, stay tuned for after the show.
Hey, if you're going through something right now, if you need additional support, then please reach out to me at randyspelling.com/help or go to my Instagram at randyspelling. Thanks.